Today I plan on painting a little bit more of the sunshine set of mine painting I started in the last vlog. But first, I came across some information about how to dilute acrylic paint, different tidbits that I found interesting. So I thought I would touch on that with you. Maybe it could help. Let me set this up and I'll show you what I've learned. The first thing and the most obvious thing is to use water to dilute acrylic paints to make it more flowy and liquidy. The tricky thing about using water is not using too much. A good rule of thumb is to not dilute more than 25% of your mix with water. So 1/4 water to 1 part paint. So the point to dilute is obviously to make the paint more liquidy and fluid so that it applies better on the canvas and it allows for better gradients. By using water, we dilute the pigment, so it automatically will make the paint a little bit more transparent. Some people say that it makes the color a lot less vibrant and more muddy. Honestly, if you're a purist, you might not want to use water at all to dilute, and there are other ways. But I've been using water for years and I find that to me it works as long as I don't put too much. The risk of using too much water would be to break up the binding of the acrylic paint so that on the canvas it would adhere less well. Basically with time it could crack or peel off or damage your art. So the maximum would be 25% water. The standard alternative to water would be to use matte medium. Matte medium is amazing. I use it all the time as well. I use it to dilute, but also I use it as kind of glue in collage art. It's matte, it dries translucid. It's not fully liquidy, it's kind of like halfway between water and gel. And again, when diluting with matte medium, using 25% will ensure that the paint retains its opacity. Contrary to water, if you use more matte medium, it won't break up the paint and prevent it from sticking to the canvas properly. When using 50 to 60% matte medium to paint, it becomes a glaze. So it becomes a very translucid color. Glazing is an interesting technique to overlap colors but play with transparencies, especially for portrait and skin and maybe emulating some types of fabric. Now, having said that, a really cool way to have acrylic paint be very liquidy but retain a really good opacity is to use airbrush medium. Airbrush medium is very liquid, but it's a paint medium, so it won't do that thing where it breaks up acrylic paint the way water would. To get the paint very liquefied, kind of like watercolors, but using acrylic, it's suggested to use soft body paint in the proportion of 50-50 with airbrush medium. I haven't tried this yet, but I'm really curious to try it. I'd like to see a side-by-side of watercolor versus acrylic paint very diluted. I think that would be interesting. So the optimal way to have a very diluted acrylic paint mix would be to use airbrush medium as opposed to water, because with airbrush medium you can go up to 50% while keeping all the properties you want in acrylic paint. Another really cool thing that I found out that I really didn't know, maybe it's obvious to some, but it wasn't obvious to me. For instance, Liquitex, I've been using them for a really long time. They have two consistencies in their paint. There's the soft body and heavy body. I never really thought much about it. I guess subconsciously I thought that the heavy body was a less diluted version of the soft body, as in they would just put more binder in this to make it more liquidy than this. So I thought buying this was more advantageous because I could dilute it myself and have the paint last longer, like have more paint essentially. But it's not the case. According to Liquitex, both consistencies have the same opacity or vibrancy in pigment. So by diluting heavy body paint, it automatically will make it less pigmented, a little bit more transparent. Essentially, if I wanted the heavy body to have the same consistency as the soft body, I would end up with a more transparent mix for the same consistency. So the idea is to choose well from the get-go. Depending on your art style and what type of work you want to do, the heavy body has that thickness to it and you can get great texture on the canvas if you like the big volume on the canvas, maybe working with a palette knife and different modeling paste and mediums, whereas the soft body is more a traditional thinner layer of paint. Like I said, I never thought of it in those terms, but it really makes sense. So going forward, I will really make sure that I pick the right paint for the job. Personally, I'll keep using water to dilute paint in a minimal way, as in not exceed 25% of water. But the 1 part to 1 part airbrush trick to have a liquidy but very vibrant mix is something that I will definitely give a try. And keeping in mind that when I dilute with matte medium, it's also the 25% ratio. And if I go over that, which I can, it'll become a glaze instead of opaque paint. If you use acrylic paint, let me know if you found a big difference between using matte medium to dilute versus a little bit of water. Have you seen a big difference in the color vibrancy? What do you do? Because I haven't seen a huge difference, honestly. The only thing I'll be really careful about is when I mix big batches of paint, sometimes pre-mixed paint, I will use matte medium instead of using water. But on my palette, I've been spraying water and it's been working okay so far. I'm curious to know your opinion. Now, enough chatter, time to paint. I want to work on this painting. I don't know if I'll be able to finish it today. I would really, really love to. I'll give it my best shot and see how it goes. I'm all done. I'm really happy about it. As you saw, at first I wasn't sure if I was gonna have the hat yellow or just the cup yellow. At one point I wanted to Photoshop and I did a few tests to see what color combination would give the effect that I wanted more. In the end, I decided to go very minimally with a hint of a hat white that kind of melds into the background and have that big pop of yellow with the mug. And I feel like symbolically it works perfectly as well. I put a lot of details in this painting, and what I'm noticing is that it gives me more of an illustrative kind of feel and less of an expressive painting. It turned out that way, but that's not what I intended. I really enjoy the less precise type of spontaneous feel in painting, so more erratic lines, irregular lines, seeing the brush strokes and having lots of contrast and textures. There isn't much of that in here. I would like it to be a lot bolder. I do like the result, but going forward, I will keep that in mind and I will try to have a more expressive rendering of my subject matter. I will try that for sure in the next Sunshine State of Mind painting. If you want more inspiration, you can watch this one next. I'll see you in just a few days for another one.